So it's official. There's been the Madueke to Arsenal. Here we go. And David Ornstein has now confirmed that Arsenal are close to a full agreement with Chelsea to sign Madueke. The deal is closed, £52 million deal. He will obviously maybe complete the move after the final. Romano has given the here we go. So I want to talk about Madueke to Arsenal. I want to talk about it as a Man United fan, but in the most neutral perspective that I can, because when I first saw this, I was a bit confused. When I saw the price tag, I thought 52 million, backup right wing. I guess he can play on the left and he could probably push Martinelli out on the left, but he's better on the right. There's a lot of money for a depth signing, and I had a little bit of element of confusion around why Arsenal are signing this guy. The more and more I've thought about it, and the more I've looked at the fact that Arsenal are looking at Madueke, Gyokeres and Eze, I'm starting to notice something, which I don't know if anyone else is starting to notice, about maybe why Arsenal are getting Madueke. Gyokeres, Eze, and Madueke all have something in common that kind of makes sense when you look at Arsenal's biggest weakness last season. Now, I'm not saying that Madueke for 52 million is the guy Arsenal should have signed. I look at Arsenal and I think that Madueke is a little bit underwhelming when we know that Arsenal need an elite level left winger, and if you want to catch City, you want to catch Liverpool, there's better players out there. But Madueke is a good player. Madueke is overhated. Madueke is getting way too much hate. But Madueke is a player that I would say would be a really good signing for Newcastle, a team that wants to consistently be in the top four. I think he can help teams get Champions League football at Villa and Newcastle. A very good signing. Would have been a good signing for Tottenham when they had Ange because he suited Ange Ball. It's not necessarily a player that I think takes Arsenal from second to first. It's a player that I think takes you from sixth to fourth. If you get what I mean, I think it's a good player. And I think, he's a little bit overhated. It's not who I would have spent 52 million on. I think that's a lot of money for someone that's a Saka backup. But there's some strengths of Madueke. There's some bits of this deal that make sense when you look at Eze and you look at Gyökeres both coming in on top of him and how that dynamic works and what you will bring. And I'm going to talk about that. I'm going to talk about what the deal really means. I'm going to talk about what people aren't noticing. I'm going to talk about what this means for Rodrygo. I'm going to talk about what this means for Eze. And I'm going to break this down. But let's start by talking about Madueke, his strengths. I've got a lot to talk about on Madueke. Not just his strengths, but everything as well. But I do think if you want to catch City Liverpool, he's maybe not the guy. But then Madueke, Eze, and Gyökeres, three signings boost to Arsenal's attack if we're talking about balance, that maybe it is good. And the way I'm going to explain this is Real Madrid have all the best 11 individuals, Rodrygo, Mbappe, and Vinicius, yeah? I mean, Rodrygo didn't have the best season, but Vinicius and Mbappe are like the two Ballon d'Or contenders, yeah? But actually, they're both the main men, and it doesn't always work together. Sometimes it's about balance, and sometimes it's about game plan and how Arteta may adapt. But Gyökeres coming in, and how Madueke could be used, and how when Saka got injured, it was a big blow, and now there's good cover there. There's a lot of things to take into account. So I think this is a better signing than it's getting credit for, because we're seeing petitions from Arsenal fans annoyed about the signing. You look at Havertz when he came in, how he was better than expected. But it's not who I would have spent 52 million on if I was Arsenal. It's not who I would have spent 52 million on. I would have gone and big on a left wing. Maybe Eze is going to play left wing because I think Arteta is going to adapt his tactics with Gyökeres coming in, where his left wing is going to come inside more and be a bit of support, because that would get the best out of Gyökeres because he likes to run the channels. And Madueke potentially is depth there, and it's good depth, and it's. But let's talk about Madueke, and we'll talk about strengths, but I'm going to talk about something that Madueke, Eze, and Gyökeres all have in common. We'll talk about Rodrygo, we will talk about Arsenal's plan, but yeah, Madueke is in the 99th percentile for progressive parries, 96th percentile for touches in the box. He's one of the most explosive ball carriers in the Premier League. He's good at drawing fouls. Arteta loves that. Free kicks, set pieces. Arteta loves that. He's good in tight spaces. He's good at breaking down low blocks, and that's something Arsenal struggled with. Arsenal need players that they are confident can do a job against a low block. That is your biggest problem. And Madueke can do that. And I think that's probably what they've seen the most in Madueke. High shot volume, good dribbling, can create something out of nothing, is inconsistent, rash decision making, as you'd expect with young players. But he did show a lot of progress this season for Chelsea. He does do well in tight spaces, does do well at drawing fouls, which is set pieces, which is something Arsenal love, but is good at breaking down low blocks. And if you look at what Arsenal lack, it's shot takers, ball carriers, and risk takers, and unpredictable players. That's what they lack. Shot takers, ball carriers, risk takers, unpredictable players. That's what they lack. I did a video last year on Odegaard. And maybe I was a little critical of Odegaard, but I said with Odegaard he's too passive. That was my biggest criticism of Odegaard. I felt that Arsenal were the best team out of possession, and they dominated a lot of games out of possession. They had the best defensive record. I thought they were incredible in the first and second phase, Arsenal. but they get to the final phase and they could not break down low blocks. There was a lot of games where Arsenal drew, which maybe they could have won had they broken down the low block. And we talk about Liverpool. Liverpool win ugly. Liverpool can play bad, and Salah gets a goal. And Liverpool could have been crap. They could have been 1-0 down, but they win 2-1 because Liverpool can win when they're bad because they've got match winners. City can win when they're bad. Man United were never good last year, but thanks to Bruno Fernandes, we won a lot of games when we were crap because Bruno would come out with something out of nothing. And outside of Saka, Arsenal lack that. Odegaard doesn't do that, and that's where I've been critical of Odegaard. Now with Eze, with Madueke and with Gyokeres, now Madueke is inconsistent, of course, but Eze, Madueke and Gyokeres, all players that can come out with something out of nothing. Gyokeres has scored a lot of goals out of nowhere. Eze has scored a lot of goals and created a lot of moments out of nowhere. And Madueke is someone that likes to dribble, take on players, make things happen, take shots, is unpredictable. So you've got 3 players there that aren't going to be doing backwards, sideways passing and be predictable like Arteta has been and like Arsenal have been. Because in the final third, when Arsenal are 1-1 and there's 20 minutes to go, it's almost like sometimes you know Arsenal aren't going to find that winner. These are players that will try something different and it increases Arsenal's unpredictability, which I think is their biggest weakness. So when I'm trying to look at maybe why Arsenal have signed Madueke, because I am a bit confused about spending so much money on Madueke, who again I think is overhated. I think it would be a good signing for a lot of teams, but if Arsenal will go from second to first, I'm not sure. But then if I add to the fact that Madueke is allowing them to get Gyokeres, and Madueke is allowing them to get Eze, and Eze and Gyokeres are very good signings, and then I look at the balance of it, and I look at the fact that they're all good volume shooters, aggressive dribblers, final third disruptors, I'm like, low blocks was the biggest problem. This is how they're solving it. Maybe that's why. Now, £50 million for a natural right winger when Bukayo Saka's your best player, yeah, that's the question. He can play left wing, and I think he's better than Martinelli. I think he could start there. But he's a right winger, but he can't play left wing. So I get the confusion. Is this the winger Arsenal need? Is this who I'd have signed? No. Could this work? Yes. Havertz, a lot of confusion around that. It's worked quite well. I just think with Arsenal, when you're linked to Rodrygo and this player and that player, and you end up with Madueke, it can be underwhelming, 100%. But again, he's a decent player. I think people are making out he's crap, but I think there's a lot of Chelsea fans which would have liked him. He came on and in one of the Chelsea games last week, and what I thought was a bit of a game changer, looked really good for them. And he's shown a lot of development in the last year. He's still young, he's still raw, and I think he could do well under Arteta. But one thing else I've noticed is maybe Arsenal are trying to build elite depth. Now again, a lot of money to spend on a depth player, but you look at what this could tell us about what Arsenal are doing, and is this a direct response to last season's injury crisis, particularly with Saka, that you've now got some good cover for Saka? Waneri's there to play right wing, to play 10, to be depth, but he's just a 17-year-old kid. Madueke coming in, boom. Mascara apparently coming in, not done yet, because I think they want more money. And Norgard's a depth signing. Mascara is a depth signing for Saliba and that, and I think with Tomiyasu going, not that he's a right back, but yeah. Mascara's coming as a depth signing at the back. Not that you need centre back, but it's a good young depth signing at the back, so in case something happens to Saliba. Norgard is there as depth with Marino, potentially even Lewis Skelly for midfield, behind Subamende, Rice and Odegaard. Madueke could play left wing, can challenge that, but it gives something different to Saka. And gives an option to rotate Saka with, because I feel like Saka had to play every minute of every game and he's ran to the ground, and you've got to think about it. Arteta will want someone that he can trust to rotate Saka with and be able to bench Saka, because when Saka's had that injury, it's a warning sign of he's not going to be able to play every game week in, week out. You're going to need to rotate him. So I look at it and I think, if you look at City and Liverpool, they rotate stars, they've got good depth. You look at Liverpool's left wing, they can play Diaz there, they can play Gakpo there. They had good options, I know Darwin Núñez wasn't the best, but under Klopp, Darwin Núñez was pretty good. But if they wanted to swap Darwin Núñez out, they had, of course, Gakpo that could play centrally because he's adaptable, and Jota, may he rest in peace. They had a lot of depth, Liverpool. City have always had depth, probably the least amount of depth they had last year. But if you look at City now, they've got Echeverry coming in. They've got Oscar Bob back, we're talking young, but that's kind of like Waneri category. But then if you're talking about Marmoush, you're talking about Cherki, you're talking about Doku, who looked really good lately, Savinho, Haaland. City all of a sudden got that bit of depth there. I think that's maybe what Arsenal are looking at. I think Madueke is a clear improvement on like a a Reece Nelson as well. So maybe Arsenal, what they're trying to do is not just build a strong starting 11, but they're starting to build a squad because Champions League risks, demands. Maybe that's what they're trying to do, but they're also looking at their biggest weakness in the sense of, well, we need more risk takers. And well, what is Madueke? A risk taker. He's direct, aggressive, and a good ball carrier, which is what Arteta wants. He can hold the width and take on players and create unpredictability, which is what Arteta wants. He is raw. His decision making could improve, but he is hard-working. He's left-footed, so it is a natural backup to Saka, but he is a confidence player. I think with confidence and I think with backing and development, I think he could be a really good player, Noni Madueke. I think he also works quite well with Gyokeres because, as I said, he is one of the best ball progressors statistically. Gyokeres thrives off chaos, space, interchanges. Madueke could drift wide. Eze can come in centrally. Gyokeres can run the channels. The dynamic works quite well, with obviously Saka, world-class player, in there. But Arsenal adding runners, risk takers, and the new number 9, it could work. I would have signed Rodrygo. I'm not saying I would have signed Madueke. But I'm saying if I was to try and understand why Arsenal have spent this kind of money on Madueke, maybe it's about balance, not individuals. Because we've seen with Real Madrid, you can have the best 3 attackers in the world, but actually it doesn't work very well. Maybe this is about balance. Maybe this is the bigger picture of things. Maybe this is how they're going to adapt to get the best out of Gyokeres. Because right now in Arsenal's current system, Gyokeres isn't the most natural fit. But if Arteta changes the way he attacks and the way he approaches the game, he could unleash Gyokeres and let him run the channels, and maybe Arsenal become more transition-based, which is something that Madueke is good at. You look at the Wolves game where he scored a hat-trick, Cole Palmer got all the assists. Maybe there's something there. Do you know what I mean? Now, if we look at Madueke, the stats are decent for some of his metrics as well. 94th percentile for non-penalty XG, 93rd percentile for shots taken per 90, and 99th percentile for progressive carries. So there's all those good things there. It's a lower percentile when it comes to assists and pass completion, but he's got raw, explosive potential, as I've said. A lot of his potential. He's only 23. He's still incredibly young. But to be honest, to conclude, 52 million is a big fee for a rotation option. So I'm assuming he's going to be the starting left wing, or Eze is going to be the starting left wing, and Arteta's going to adapt how he uses left wingers. Eze coming in also offers depth for Odegaard. Madueke coming in is depth for Saka. Norgo coming in as depth for midfield, Mascara coming in as depth for Saliba. So I guess it's having good depth options for your best players. Plus Madueke could play left. Plus Eze and Madueke could play left wing instead of Martinelli. That's been hit and miss. It's a big fee. It's not who I would have signed, but I think there's a reason behind it. Is what I'm trying to explain. I think it's better depth, and like Havertz, this could be a surprise. This could be a surprise because Havertz has actually been all right. He's actually, he's shown elements. And look, we know that Madueke is a separate deal with Eze, but Jacobs, many journalists have said that Madueke does not impact Eze. But Arsenal are expected to move for Eze now, this and that. The big question is, if you sign Madueke, Eze, and Gyokeres, that's okay. But if you sign Madueke, Eze, Gyokeres, and Rodrygo, then I don't think anyone's going to have an issue with the Madueke signing. They might say it's a lot of money for a depth player. No one's going to have an issue because an Arsenal have signed 4 good attackers that really levels up the attack. And there is some developments on Rodrygo. A direct meeting to decide Rodrygo's future will take place next week. Real Madrid are open to letting him leave. Rodrygo will make the final decision. He's not interested in Al Nassr and wants to stay in Europe. Now, reports from Spain are saying Rodrygo's kind of being forced out, so he's sort of decided to leave now. But we don't know if Rodrygo wants to leave for sure because Ramon hasn't confirmed that. But Real Madrid are now looking for a club to buy Rodrygo. The club has decided to move him on, and Xabi Alonso agrees with the board that Rodrygo should be sold this summer. There's now suggestions coming on that Rodrygo's open to moving, but Rodrygo's being really pushed out. Now, with his wages, with Real Madrid wanting 70 million, I don't think Arsenal could afford that on top of Eze, on top of Madueke, on top of Gyokeres. But you never know. There's a lot of money for the British clubs in the market. It'll be interesting to see what happens. But look, the price of the market is crazy. Alanga's 55 million, Madueke's 52 million, Gittins is 55 million. Yeah, it's crazy. Anyway, let me know your thoughts down below. Thank you for watching. Bye.